As Star Wars is one of my favorite franchises of all time, it's time to rank all 11 theatrical releases from the worst to the best. Hello everyone, I hope you're having a cinematastic day. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema, and before we get into my personal thoughts on this film, I'd love to hear yours down in comments below. Be sure to be respectful of others' opinions. We all have our own takes, all have our own opinions, and what we expected from each film, what we wanted from each film, and therefore we all have our own personal take, and that's just gonna be all right. We can discuss respectfully what we like versus what we didn't like in this franchise as a whole. Coming in at last place, we have Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. What a disappointment this kind of was. I still enjoy all of the Star Wars movies, so this is still a good one. It just led me to be inclined to watch it again in the theaters, but for the wrong reason, because I didn't quite enjoy it as much as I expected to. So the second time I went in and tried to enjoy it a little bit more, and it did succeed in that way, but it still does have its problems. It still feels quite busy, doesn't seem to try and wrap up the film in a super organized fashion. There's certain scenes that don't feel completely fresh, especially as it's trying to be the conclusion to the whole Skywalker saga, and therefore it's having too much weight. It's adding two new side characters that add some bonus little backstory to our present characters, but we don't get too much to them that makes them worth being in a concluding chapter to a whole saga. While it's good, fun, and satisfactory, it's just not the thing I kind of expected, even though I didn't go in making a list of expectations wanting from this film. Coming in at number 10, we have Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. This film just never struck me as powerfully as everyone else. I see it still as a really good film. I see the different moments, the different bits of romance, the sci-fi adventure, and just how everything plays out, but none of it truly has a ton of tension driven within the mix. There's so many scenes that are cut short in a way that's it's scene after scene after scene, and none of them feel long enough that you're really getting the tension when there's a little bit of danger. And while some of it does present the feelings I'm supposed to feel from it, it's more feelings from just enjoying the Star Wars adventure as a whole, and just enjoying the Star Wars movie, especially as I rewatch it amongst these other films. It completes the middle of the original trilogy, and that's really all it captures. Is I can see the arcs and building up of these different characters added in within the mix, but it doesn't fully grab my attention every time I watch it. At number 9, we have Star Wars The Phantom Menace. Just sort of an underrated film. It has a lot of fun different moments. It does have the goofy dialogue, but for me personally, I don't mind the way they portray this whole story. I don't get annoyed by Little Annie. I don't get annoyed by Jar Jar Binks. I enjoy their characters for who they are, what they bring out, and while it doesn't set it up right away of Anakin's backstory, it takes about a half hour to really get to him, even though he should be the central focus to this first trilogy. I really still enjoy it for what it brings to different culture aspects. The pod racing scene is really fun and enjoyable, even if it does sidetrack a little, but I still enjoy a lot of the different aspects that this film does bring to the Star Wars universe with what it portrays. I mean, at number 8, we have Attack of the Clones, a much hated on movie, but I still find it really enjoyable, especially with the Battle of Geonosis, all of that, and the duel versus Count Dooku with Yoda, and then we get Anakin and Obi-Wan. The different arcs and the progression of Anakin's anger turning to the dark side, you really see it, and you really see the build-up of him really starting to become angry and his rise to power and greed, and just just the aggression he has within him, and you see it throughout the Clone Wars TV show as well. But if you're just looking at the main films, this does a really good job of starting that tension, building up his rise to becoming Darth Vader, and overall it's still really fun, even though some of the dialogue is cheesy and weirdly written, but I still enjoy the different moments that it has within. Next up, we have Solo, a Star Wars story, the film that has the least tension added into it, the least impact to the rest of the whole galaxy. It's just a fun side adventure of a young Han Solo, and I really don't mind Alden's role as young Han Solo. It doesn't fully get me bought into knowing he's Han Solo, but by the end, it's kind of does a little bit from time to time. There's just different little moments that gets me into thinking this is Han Solo, and then Danny Glover as Lando. And I just really enjoy this Western side adventure that they add into the mix. It has quite a few surprises, and I really love the little sort of double plot twist near the end. It's just really enjoyable and fun, and having all of these characters mixed in together in a story that I never expected to see on the big screen. Solo, a Star Wars story is just kind of just those really fun movies that you can't go too wrong with, even if it's not fantastic. Number 6, we have Star Wars Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and this is a fun film. Once again, it does have quite a bit more tension than Solo as a Star Wars story, because it's still leading up to having a huge battle that sort of impacts the galaxy. It leads to the creation and presentation of the Death Star for the first time. It sort of shows more of the emotional impact of being on the planet that's getting blown up, and just showing the more of the real-time aspect of that. It's not like the planet blows up right away and that's it. It's sort of progressively blowing up, as not presented in A New Hope, which could create some inconsistencies, but also this is created about 40 years after the original, so it's still really enjoyable for what it's trying to bring out, and based on the fact that it's basically created based on one line of thousands of soldiers died to get these plans, it creates a surprisingly good impact that still feels more like the original, and it feels like it connects to the original. At number 5, we have Star Wars A New Hope, a really fun classic sci-fi adventure. This is more reminding me of sort of how Guardians of the Galaxy works. There's just a bunch of different creatures, a bunch of different aliens, and it all combines it in a group that doesn't seem like it should work, with Chewbacca, Han, Leia, Obi-Wan, and Luke. Just all of these different set of characters brought together, along with R2-D2 and C-3PO, just droids, a Wookiee, humans, and then it's brought into a world with all of these different types of aliens and all of these different planets in a galaxy that's presented in a classic tale of just being able to get caught up in the Death Star and then having to just go through all of this adventure. And it all started with Luke being stuck on this farm, wanting to go out and explore the galaxy, and therefore he's become one of these more internet icons of becoming just this true hero destroying the Death Star. And because of George Lucas's ideas and how he brought this to life, it brought out a long 40-year franchise that we did not expect. He probably did not expect to live out this long in its iconicity and popularity. Number 4, we have Revenge of the Sith, a really well done conclusion to the prequel trilogy with all of its kind of oddly written dialogue, just like the first 2 films in this, but it's done in more of an iconic way and more funny and meme way that you can still really enjoy. It doesn't feel like offsetting or wrong in some ways, so it doesn't quite feel realistic. But just the conclusion and arc of bringing Anakin, transforming him into Darth Vader, is super powerful. The way they bring out Order 66 from all that, and the tears that you shed from the way they bring out the end of the Jedi, the end of the Republic, it's just really strong. And just seeing Obi-Wan as his mentor and being broken down from this, the way it translates this into becoming the start of episode 4, and though there's a 20-year gap, it still shows the presentation of how this ends this trilogy, and it leads up to the original trilogy that we had originally gotten. It didn't feel quite planned out the way it started out, but overall it still feels like it's really well done and really well ended out, as we get all of these visuals added within the mix. And while the CGI isn't great, it's relying so much on it, it still doesn't feel bad in every little aspect. Moving on to number 3, we have Star Wars The Force Awakens, the return of Star Wars in 2015, once Disney bought out Lucasfilm, and it still feels really fresh, really like Star Wars. It doesn't feel unique in some ways because it sort of replicates the template of Star Wars The New Hope, but it still feels more fun and more exciting than that one in certain ways, adding the different modern visuals, different modern twists, a different way of creating these characters. And the story has just enough uniqueness to it that still makes it really fun and really enjoyable in its own way, that sets it apart a little bit from The New Hope, that still makes me enjoy it that much more. Star Wars Return of the Jedi, just a really good classic and a really satisfying end to the original trilogy as a whole, and from what was the original 6 films as a whole, what The Rise of Skywalker couldn't quite conclude quite as satisfactory. But for Return of the Jedi, just a really well-written story arc, coming off from episode 5, which wasn't the greatest, but it still concluded the trilogy so well, coming off of that, Luke becoming a Jedi for the first time, and really just becoming this transformation, redeeming his father from the Emperor, and just the way the story flows is really well written. The attack on Endor, the attack on space, and the final duel versus Luke versus Darth Vader versus Palpatine, the way all of that is transformed and written and presented is somehow done so seamlessly, having all of these different battles, having all of these different characters, and it's still done in a way that's enjoyable and really well portrayed, and still really gets the job done on what you're concluding in this franchise. At number 1, we have Star Wars The Last Jedi, my favorite movie of all time. You can check out a full review up in that corner if I don't give you enough explanation. But I just really enjoy the characters, the story, the ambitiousness of this film, of the direction it takes, the plot twist it's written in. Rian Johnson really crafts a well-written Star Wars film that has all of these iconic moments, feels very fresh and feels very Star Wars-y in all of its lightsaber fights, all of its vehicle space battles, all of its different ways of presenting all of these gunfights, and just all of the different dynamics added in between with the character arcs, with the visuals, with all of just basically everything from this film. It feels so fresh, it feels so exhilarating just seeing all of these different fights take place, and especially with the holo maneuver, it's really shakes me and really gets me speechless as it goes to blank silence And just the way this whole story is executed, this whole movie is executed, is just exhilarating and exciting all at the same time. And therefore, I have to put it at number one. Those were just my personal ranking on all of the Star Wars theatrical releases, and I'd love to hear yours down in comments below. Of course, make sure to be respectful of others' opinions. I know this is a very controversial sort of franchise that so many people have different opinions. So many people have strong opinions on certain movies. So be respectful of other comments and my own. And I'll love to hear what you have to say down in the comments below. Let's create a nice, respectful discussion. And make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new here, and make sure to check out some of these other videos on the left-hand side of the screen. And I'll be back for more movie reviews, rankings, and more.